are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News.
President Buhari sacks Rashid Maina from service, orders head of service to report circumstances behind his reinstatement.
For us in Nigeria will remain on board the EITI and the ownership transparency train because they align with our national priorities.
Vice President Oshibajo declares dangerous trend of secret ownership of companies.
And Standard Organization of Nigeria intensifies clampdown on dealers of adulterated fertilizer in Benue State.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on sustainable development goals. Journey so far.
All right. After the expiration of the first 15 years, which committed countries of the world to a set of some 8 developmental goals which are aimed at addressing fundamental issues concerning development, they again sat in September 2015 to adopt another set of goals to be achieved within another next 15 years.
Yes, Claire. After the year 2000 milestone, which gave birth to the Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals was adapted to succeed those efforts, though not achieved by all, but made significant impact in addressing challenges of development, especially in developing countries like Nigeria.
Indeed, Cliff, you're quite right there. And of course, while the MDGs had only 8 goals, the new development framework, that's the SDGs, has a set of 17 goals and 169 targets and several indicators that not only encompass, of course, the 8 of the MDGs, that's those that were not achieved, but also includes new ones that the world believes are necessary to end poverty, hunger, and as well as protecting the planet and ensure prosperity for everyone.
Claire, that's quite right, and I know you've been on top of that. The Sustainable Development Goals not only deals with economic, social, and gender issues, but also health, education, environment, water and sanitation, as well as global partnerships to achieve universal peace, harmony, and sustainability.
Now, Cliff, here's the good thing, or the real core thing about the SDGs, and that's the fact that it encompasses all, irrespective of status, gender, nationality, race, and of course other classifications, including of course individual groups and government. All have roles to play towards achieving the realizable goals, and that includes ensuring that no one, even those furthest within the communities, are left behind.
Including you and I.
Precisely.
Because we all have a role to play.
Precisely.
Either as a reporter looking at issues that affect humanity and bringing it to the front burner.
Precisely.
Simple things like saving electricity by plugging appliances into a power strip and turning them off completely when not in use. Stop paper bank statements and paying bills online or via mobile to reduce paper use. Consequently, reduce forest destruction.
Indeed, Cliff, and just like you said, very simple things that are required of individuals, including, of course, you reporting the quality of work that is done within your community, you following up the work, projects and programs of government, both at the local and at every tier of government, and of course, you taking ownership of those responsibilities. Now, of course, groups and individuals are required to share, as we said, interesting social media posts about, for instance, women's rights or even climate change. Speak up to ask local and national authorities to engage in initiatives that don't harm people or the planet. These are very simple things that, of course, are required at the very minute level.
Yes, and I know that NTA has continued to live up to that because we'll always be on the spot to make sure that we report whatever is happening. The adoption of the MDG and its transition to SDG, we're all there. But at the right time, we will continue to recall that because we'll have one of our own that remained on top of it, even as it progresses. So to the community, vaccination to protect self and family members from disease, to aid public health, participation in electing leaders in the country and local community, cutting down on waste and the like, just to mention a few, are some of the requirements of the Sustainable Development Goals, which experts say will go a long way in making the world a better place for everyone.
Indeed, Cliff, if just like as we have rolled out, if all of these are, just a few of what, will be required of the individual to be part of this laudable goal, you can imagine what would be required of governments, of course, that are expected to drive attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, what are the Sustainable Development Goals, you may ask, and how is it, different in content and, of course, in structure from the Millennium Development Goals? Now, why should the world be concerned about them, and where are we now? That's, of course, Nigeria. Where is Nigeria now with regards to domestication and implementation of the SDGs 2 years into its adoption? I can remember we, of course, started implementation on the 1st of January 2016. It was adopted in 2015 at United Nations Garden. But when will the impact be felt? Will Nigeria this time around achieve the goals? Now, okay.
A whole lot of thought-provoking questions. What impact? Does it touch the human life? To what extent does it raise the standard of living at the end of the day? These are some of the questions. These and some other questions, indeed, we should try to provide answers to on Good Morning Nigeria today. And we'll have the right experts from the United Nations to other players that will be joining us in this studio as we discuss Sustainable Development Goals, the journey so far. Coming to you from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA. I am Cliff Ayoze, welcoming you to the program.
And I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. Thank you once again. We cannot thank you enough for joining us every morning, of course, to be part of our conversation to make our country greater. And of course, in the course of the program, we'll also bring to you other companion segments. A newspaper review will be on. We'll talk about business a bit, and then we'll look at development in the sports world before we, of course, travel to other parts of the continent to see what news has broke there. And then arts and entertainment will, of course, take the rear. But right now, we're going to our newsroom where Joy Osiago, who, of course, attended the 72nd session of of UNGAS, just a couple of weeks back.
And you know too well that she did some crispy reports that I remember so well, and I'm sure it will form for part of our conversation later on this very program, Good Morning Nigeria today.
Indeed, so I'd just like to ask just briefly before she takes on the news. Joe, you were enthralled, with the participation of Nigeria. And I remember in our conversation, you particularly singled out some states. What was it that caught your attention?
Thank you very much, Claire. The most important thing is that this session was the call to action, and it was obvious that there's political will on the part of Nigeria, and states are ready to focus on the key issues that they're looking at: inclusiveness, partnership, so they can work together, not just with development partners, but also get states and people at the grassroots to network with the national level for proper development plan integration. So I'm very positive that we will have good results before the year 2030.
Indeed, Joy, thank you. And that will form part of our conversation. But please get on with the news.
Good morning. President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered the disengagement of the former chairman of the Presidential Task Force on Pensions Reform, Abdul Rashid Maina, from the Federal Service. Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, announced this in a statement. A memo was sent to the head of service of the Federation demanding full report on circumstances that led to the recall of Maina and posting to the Interior Ministry before the end of work on Monday. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari will this Tuesday depart for Niamey, Republic of Niger, to participate in a meeting on common currency for the West African sub-region. A statement from the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, says member countries of the ECOWAS Task Force on Common Currency are Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Niger. The statement says the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, and the Central Bank of Nigeria Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, will also join the President at the meeting. President Buhari is to return to Abuja same day after the meeting. In another development, President Muhammadu Buhari has challenged media handlers of states executives to embrace the culture of using facts and figures in promoting their principles. President Buhari stated this in a message at the opening of the conference organized by the Nigerian Governors Forum Conference for Executive Media Handlers in Abuja.
Never before have these evil twins of disinformation and fake news permeated the public space as they have now. And make no mistakes about it, they have become potent weapons in the hands of the opposition.
In the meantime, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has described the secret ownership of companies as dangerous. The Vice President, who stated this at the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative Conference in Jakarta, Indonesia, says more than $50 billion is lost to illicit financial flows. He thanked the United Kingdom, Denmark, amongst others, for leading the way in establishing public register of the real owners of companies and their respective countries, and called on the G8 and G20 countries to follow suit by initiating actions to end corporate secrecy at home and their dependencies.
Remain on board the EITI and the ownership transparency trade because they align with our national priorities and, of course, will help to advance even the electoral mandate of our administration, which is to fight corruption, combat insecurity, and grow the economy.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo said Nigeria is still grappling with negative consequences of the use of capacity by senior members of government and their cronies. Between 1993 and 1998, who awarded themselves juicy contracts in the extractives industry like the Malibu oil and gas, which is subject of criminal and civil proceedings in many parts of the world, involving huge legal costs, while the full benefit of the natural resources remain unexploited for the benefit of the people. Foreign Affairs Minister The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, has debunked some alleged media reports on the extradition of 1,000 Turkish nationals at the request of the Turkish government. A statement by the Special Advisor Media to the Minister, Sarah Sanders, states in clear terms that there was no such agreement. Every individual of whatever nationality legally residing in Nigeria is guaranteed full protection under Nigerian and international laws. The Standard Organization of Nigeria, SON, has continued its clampdown on dealers of fertilizer suspected to be adulterated in Makurdi, the Benue State capital. Charles Abba reports that this operation followed information from a preliminary investigation by the Department of Security
Staff samples were drawn to SON laboratory and another independent laboratory. The results on the fertilizer showed that all the NPK fertilizers were adulterated.
Concerted effort is being made to complement parents and schools as government intensifies its fight against child labor and trafficking in the country. The latest of such effort is the presentation of award of a Hope Aid Organization essay and art competition for secondary schools students from 5 states, including FCT. The competition was organized by Civil Society Action Against Child Labor and Trafficking in Nigeria and border communities.
When I read about it, it was so touching and so sad because this problem is actually breaking children in our country. And some children are even afraid to live to the fullest now because of this problem.
We will be training media focus groups for NAPTIP. So you can see that the message is going to reach out not just to parents, even to border officials.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Cliff and Claire after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Whenever pain occurs, you want quick relief. Try new Nurofen Express. It goes to the source of pain and gets to work in under 15 minutes. That's why Nurofen Express delivers fast and effective relief. New Nurofen Express works at the source of pain, fast.
Being a mom is great, but when your child has a fever, you don't know what to do. I trust Nurofen for Children to take care of my child's pain and fever.
Effective relief you can trust. Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
We all dream of a country where world-class amenities are provided. But everyone has a part to play by paying tax according to their income. Like my sister. Those who earn a little, pay a little. Those who earn more, pay more. And of course, those who earn the most, like me, should pay the most.
However, many have not been honestly doing this, and the government now has the data to prove it. With the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, every Nigerian citizen and company gets the opportunity to do the right thing by correctly declaring their income and assets, and also regularizing their tax status.
If you declare early, you'll be free from interest and penalties.
Daddy!
Embrace VADES for a better Nigeria.
VADES, I declare, my beauty, my nation.
Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Sir Ahmadu Bello, Chief Obafemi Awolowo.
These patriots worked together to achieve independence for one united Nigeria. Although some may say Nigeria is a mistake, we all know that the Almighty never makes mistakes.
God has not made a mistake by bringing us all together in the way that He has brought us together. God has put us together here so that we can build a community that will be an example to the entire world.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiye suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Alright, you're watching Good Morning Nigerian live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Thank you for tuning in, but it's time now to talk a bit of business. And experts have listed improved infrastructure base as quick way to achieving the ease of doing business environment. Plus, in the package, NBS data indicate sharp increase in value-added tax regime. We have details of all of these and more with Kulu Mohammed.
Hello there. Many thanks for joining us on Business News. Experts say Nigeria's quest to improve its business environment via the executive order on the ease of doing business can be achieved with the improvement of the nation's infrastructure base, adding that goods manufactured need motorable road networks to reach end users. Likewise, raw materials must be ferried to manufacturing plants in order to boost local production and eventually produce import substitutes locally, which they say will save the nation huge foreign exchange.
They've gone an extra mile to bring in foreign technical partners who will finance these modular refineries. They are ready. We, HOSCOM, are ready. Federal government is ready. The foreign technical partners are ready. If only we can expedite action.
It will be recalled that the Sukuk bond proceeds have been channeled to improving road networks across the country, most of which are economic roads linking the entire country, promoting trade and exchange of goods and services. Meanwhile, sectoral distribution of value-added tax data for second quarter 2017 reflected that the sum of 246.30 billion was generated as VAT, as against 204.77 billion generated in the first quarter of 2017 and 187.03 billion in the second quarter of 2016. Other manufacturing generated the highest amount of VAT, with 33.69 billion naira generated, and closely followed by professional services and oil producing, both generating 21.64 billion and 14.94 billion respectively, while mining generated the least and closely followed by local government councils, pharmaceuticals, soaps and toiletries. Out of the total amount generated in the second quarter of 2017, 137.79 billion was generated as non-import VAT locally, while 59.83 billion was generated as non-import VAT for foreign. The balance of 48.68 billion was generated as NCS import value-added tax. And the equities market opened the first day of trading in the red, as all-share index shaded 0.48% to close at 36,411.73 basis points. Let's now see how trading went down on Monday. That's Business News. Good Morning Nigeria continues right after now. Thanks for watching.
Special thanks to Kolo Mohammed there for keeping us up to speed with developments in the business world. And it's time now to review the newspapers for today in a moment.
Right, and newspaper reviewer for today is, of course, one of our regular faces here, Omini. Odin Omini, thank you for joining us once again.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be back after a long while.
Well, actually, you want to start off, or should I start?
All right. Anyway, let's kick start it. Okay, you can start with the New Telegraph.
Okay, the New Telegraph it is, and quite a busy front page this morning. But as expected, the lead story is pension fraud. EFCC seals Maina's $2 million Abuja mansion, and quite a number of riders there. Buhari queries HOS, sacks ex-pension boss. Oyorita Interior Minister lied on reinstatement, and NLC Fawashe seek fresh probe into recall, and PDP demands Dembazao and Malame's sack. Details of that you can find on page 2. And just before I take the sports story that it's of course trending right there. Okay, let me take it again. Ronaldo wins FIFA's Best Player Award. That's it's on page 37. It happened I think yesterday. And Akeredolu signs MOUs on agri projects. You can find it there. Now, Buhari to Jonathan, my achievements are real, not lies. Asks ex-president to account for huge revenues. You can find that details of that will continue on page 3. Now, hope rises as new pneumonia vaccine debuts on page 6. It's trending at the bottom. Just a little below the nameplate, the story is trending there. You can find from left to right. Air Force officers in trouble for stealing iron pipes. And you'll find the suspects right there inside. The details of that on page 9. $1.3 billion Malibu scandal still haunting Nigeria. And that's coming from the Vice President, Osinbajo. It's on page 5. Fidelity Bank raises profit by 65.1% to 16.2 billion in 9 months. And Southern governors endorse true federalism, devolution of powers. Details of that on page 2. And finally, from the New Telegraph, just atop the nameplate, Senate. Federal agencies failed to remit 1.7 trillion naira revenue. Now, NNPC operated at 3.1 trillion naira deficit in 4 years. Okay? Cliff.
Well, from that paper, we'll go to the Punch. On the Punch this morning, we have on the front page, 2 billion naira fraud, Maina on the run. President sacks him, queries HOS. HOS submits report to Buhari. And we have EFCC traces Maina to Kaduna, at his $2 million house. And we also have other stories. Meto's trial, court orders Jonathan to appear on Wednesday. PDP chief warns ex-president as witness. Dasuki disagrees. My achievements are not lies, Buhari replies Jonathan, with details on page 7 and 8. And we also have a story, Senate indicts Okonjiwala, says her memo caused 1.7 trillion naira revenue loss, with details of that report on page 23. That is what is trending on the Punch this morning. Moving on now, we have the leadership. On the leadership this morning, we have heads to roll as PMB orders Maina's sack. We have some riders, demands probe of recall circumstances. HOS, DSS denying knowledge. EFCC storms his $2 million mansion. PDP, Nigerian Labour Congress, others react. And we also have 2019. Governor Dixon denies comments on PDP. And of course, we have the picture story there. Director General of Nigerian Governors Forum, the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, Director General, National Orientation Agency, and of course, Dr. Garuba Abari, and Chairman of Federal Inland Revenue Service, Babatunde Fowler. The NGL's Conference for Media Handlers of the States. And of course, at the bottom of leadership this morning, we have Nigeria still suffering from Malabo scandal or Shubajo. Concession, 90% aviation workers to lose jobs. With details on page 25. Omni, you've seen all the screening headlines from Maina to the trials, and of course, more heads to roll. Where do you come in there? So many
Look at
headlines.
the approach of the newspaper.
But we'll speak to just 3 of the core reports today. Well, in sum, if you read the analysis from the papers this morning regarding the case of Mina, I will simply dismiss it to say the more you leak, the less you understand. There are a lot of parameters, a lot of angles given to it. Some say Mina on the run, but the papers are revealing that Mina has been around in Nigeria. EFCC says Mina is kept by the DSS. DSS say they are not being kept by, they are not keeping Mina. And the question you ask is, what are the procedures? If you look at the entire thing, it's a matter of passing bulk. But I think those who have the mandate to investigate issues like this, the administrative issues, the financial issues, the crime issues, it is in the public domain that somebody somewhere is not doing the right thing. Somebody somewhere is playing some hide and seek game, because the person in question, by the reports this morning, is within the country. Now, the property seized from one of the papers, were they not known before now? Is it that it is after the scream has come up that they will seize the property? Didn't they know about the property? One of it seized is right in Jabi in Abuja. They sealed it just yesterday. So what's the mystery around the case? That's the big question. But
another big
kudos to Mr. President. The commendation is that he has really proven to the world that he is an apostle of due process. He's an apostle. He's really standing his word as somebody who does not want the process to be truncated. Corruption must be taken to the floor. But who are the people who are really handling this? Because the
how did he get reinstated in the first
head of
place?
civil service,
That's the
office of the head of Federal Civil Service Commission, head of civil service administration, and right now is linking up to the AGF. So where are the connections? How powerful is this man?
Well,
let's quickly get on.
Well, we're not prosecuting him actually, because I know that the presidency has taken the right step. Because people predicted, let's see what the president will do, and we just got his reaction.
We just hope that the truth will really be, and the proper thing should be done, because there are a lot of buck passing between EFCC and DSS. The stories are there. Between the office of the head of service, Federal Civil Service Commission.
Do you think there are conflicts in their operations or their mandates?
I think somewhere the truth is not being told yet.
Okay.
From what the papers are saying.
Gentlemen, can we quickly? We have less than 2 minutes. Really.
Yes, I have.
Just one more paper, but okay. I think all the stories. I'll just quickly take the ones that we have not looked at. Now, the picture story, People's Daily. The picture story shows again resident doctors of University of Jos University Teaching Hospital protesting over alleged illegal sacking of 100 doctors, non-payment of salaries, and disobedience of court order by the university's management. That happened yesterday. Now, 17 states benefiting from school feeding, and that's attributed to presidency. It's on page 6. You can look at that. And just again, another version of the story about the non-remittances by MDAs. NNPC, CBN, NCC, others shortchanged federal government 1.69 trillion naira, and that's coming from the Senate. You want to speak to that?
Yes, before he goes into that, let's round off with the newspapers. So look at what the Daily Sun is talking about this morning. It says Southern governors demand power devolution at Lagos meeting. We also have the Mena mess, HOS, others in soup, President sacks as pension boards, others probe, DSS, Oyaita deny invest involvement. And of course, Benue security, yes. Akwazo's deputy killed. And of course, Senate report indicts NNPC, FIRC, customs and all that. And of course, we had this story at the bottom of Daily Sun this morning. Multiple bomb blasts kill 16 in Borno.
Well, quickly, let me dismiss the last two so that we don't take all the time. Well, the Senate ad hoc committee on alleged misuse, under remittance, and other fraudulent activities in collections, accounting, remittance, and expenditure of IGR by revenue generating agencies came up with a report yesterday. But two versions. One of the papers is talking about 1.6 trillion, whereas one is talking about 1.7 trillion. That almost all revenue generating agencies have shortchanged the federal government to the tune of 1.7. Like I said, the other one said 1.6
through under-remittances of revenue generated between 2012 and 2016. And clearly the ones highlighted: NNPC, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Customs, the CBN, NIMASA, NCC.
Okay.
And the last one quickly is the Southern Governors Forum met 12 years after it was inaugurated yesterday, and they have come up with strong, that they believe in devolution of powers and strengthening the autonomy and enhancement of the fiscal viability that will enable them to stand stronger
and other points. Well,
yes.
On that note, Ominede, would like to say special thanks to you for being here for us to look at what the newspapers are saying and looking at it from the professional perspective.
It was not being
how much they were able to source their information and the variance in the information they produce on the front page of their newspapers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, and we'll be looking at sustainable development goals, the journey so far, in a moment.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media, have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, the Made in Nigeria campaign. In the midst of unprecedented multiple challenges, our great country Nigeria, as Africa's largest economy, is surely marching on to a new era of all-round prosperity, especially through re-engineered and diversified economy, powerfully driven by the change agenda of President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR.
We will patronize local entrepreneurs. We will promote the manufacturing powerhouses. Our objective is to make Nigeria a new manufacturing hub.
It is not time to complain. It is time to join the campaign. It is time for economic recovery, growth and diversification of our economy. By Made in Nigeria.
Dettol team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs on your hands. Your hands collect germs that causes diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is wash, wash, wash your hands. Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, time to kickstart our conversation. If you're with us at the start of our program this morning, we had a chit chat with Joy Osiago, who talked to us about her experience at the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly, which is still somewhat ongoing at the moment. And she talked about the political will that Nigeria has demonstrated towards not only domesticating but achieving success with the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I must add also that Nigeria so far has been commended for the efforts that has been put towards delivering the goals. But let's listen to this background report as packaged by Joy Osiagu.
The Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, adopted by world leaders in 2000, committed member states of the United Nations to a set of 8 international development targets to be attained by the year 2015. The essence of attaining these goals was to propel countries towards planned action for international development and better standard of living for citizens across the globe. However, statistics show that many developing economies missed the target date of 2015 as a result of some challenges ranging from misplaced priorities and ability to address existing challenges with new complexities. Nigeria's midpoint assessment reports in 2009 indicated considerable progress on the target for HIV/AIDS. However, analysts say other areas suffered major setbacks due to lack of synergy and integration of the goals at the grassroots level into national development agenda. They say target approach, which attempts to identify, initiate and sustain programs for specific areas lagging behind, was also not adopted. These challenges were not peculiar to Nigeria. In 2015, global leaders therefore shifted the world into a path of sustainable and resilient development concept known as the Sustainable Development Goals SDGs 2030, which concentrates on strengthening the means to revitalize global partnerships for sustainable development with 17 key goals.
For the first time, we're not putting a band-aid on the problem, we're looking at the root causes, and unless we make the investments to look at those root causes, we are going to continue to have conflicts escalate, we're going to continue to see damage in the environment, and more people are going to be excluded. Inequality is going to be a mainstay, which is just not sustainable.
Nigeria has since swung into action based on lessons learned from the MDGs, with the national level focusing on partnerships, inclusiveness and accountability. Working closely with states and local governments, some states are ensuring that vulnerable people are not left behind by the year 2030.
We are so very concerned, particularly about poverty and hunger, because do remember that the statutory responsibility of a politically elected government like ours is the peace and stability and security of the people. But we have discovered the very strong nexus that exists between poverty and insecurity.
Beyond these elements, what are the critical challenges that must be addressed to stop the SDGs from falling into the booby traps of the MDGs? These are some of the questions our guests will attempt to answer on the program.
Special thanks there to Joy for keeping us up to speed with all the plus minus of the Sustainable Development Goals. As we discuss the issue, how do we make them avoid falling into the booby traps? We have very special guests here. And joining us to discuss this is no other person than the United Nations resident and humanitarian coordinator and UNDP resident representatives, His Excellency Edward Kalon. We welcome you.
A pleasure having me.
And also we have in the studio Professor of Public Administration, Professor Isaac Obasi of the University of Abuja. So it's our pleasure to have you join us, Prof.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Cliff, and we have here with us also Mr. Jennifer O. Gillis-Harry. He is the head sector's office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs, but he's here representing the senior special assistant to the president and SDG herself, talking about Princess Adejoke Orelokwe Adefulere. We'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Harris, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we also have joined us from our Kaduna Network Center, Mr. Barnabas Bantex, and he's the Deputy Governor of Kaduna State. Your Excellency, thank you very much. We're indeed delighted to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, Claire, let's kickstart this because the United Nations initiated this, rallied all the stakeholders, had some regional meetings in Africa, in Europe, in America before the adoption of this SDG. Can you give us insight into the makeup of the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you today. I think this is a special day for us, especially working for the United Nations and for member states of the United Nations, and most important, Nigeria as one of the biggest stakeholders in the SDGs, especially in the sub-region and Africa at large. The SDGs, I can simply put it, is a global solidarity. A global solidarity to promote prosperity and also address issues of equal opportunities, at the same time looking at environmental stewardship to strengthen universal peace in larger freedoms with a commitment to end poverty in all its forms and a pledge to ensure that no one is left behind. I think the key focus there is the issue of global solidarity. And one of the important characteristics of the SDG is that it is universal in nature in comparison to the MDGs. What we normally say is that the SDGs were developed to complete the unfinished works of the MDGs. And we are now at a central focus where we are telling member states that, listen, as far as we are concerned, when we talk about sustainable development goals, we are talking about national visions, national leadership, and national ownership to achieve the development aspiration of governments and their people. In the case of Nigeria, is trying to see how we can foster that vision, that leadership, and that ownership to achieve the development aspiration of the people of Nigeria and the government. It is a tall order. A tall order in the sense that we are actually calling on policymakers to go beyond business as usual, work for true transformation, and actually create an enabling environment so that everyone and all of us and everybody in the country becomes an active player and an agent of change.
So how do we draw a line between the Millennium Development Goals and the SDGs? Because we know that the MDGs ran for 15 good years before giving birth to what we know today as SDG. What is the difference?
And the MDGs, we are looking at 8 principal goals, as you are well aware. The SDGs are more comprehensive. They are robust in nature, and they are looking into the various areas of development aspirations that are critical for prosperity. So from 8, we're talking about 17, and 17 goals are comprehensive. We have gone one step further to ensure that these are backed with 169 indicators to ensure that member states actually work towards development aspiration of their people in a holistic manner. I think that is the difference you can draw between both.
Thank you, Mr. Carlin, for that brief introduction to what the development instrument is. But let's come back home now, because this is all about domesticating the development framework, and that's why my question is to Mr. Gillis Harry. The United Nations did say, look, fine, the SDGs, as you know, was envisioned, might be very ambitious as was initially thought because of the comprehensive nature of the goals and the targets and indicators and all that. But member countries or signatory countries were asked to domesticate and prioritize. So for Nigeria, which are our areas of priority with regards to the SDGs?
Thank you very much. The SDGs, as the resident rep has said, consists of 169 targets and 231 indicators and 17 goals. right now, the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs, we are working in close partnership with the Ministry of Budget and National Planning to determine the area of focus. And recently, the ERGP, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, was launched by Mr. President, and the SDGs, we are working right now to integrate the SDGs into the Economic Growth Plan of government, which is a medium-term plan for 2017 to 2020. I know the government aspirations as enunciated in the Economic Growth and Development Plan is just the aspirations of government, and this includes the focus on things like poverty, social inclusiveness, employment, infrastructure, and all these other development paradigms that will change and ensure economic development within the shortest time possible. So we are currently working in association with the Ministry of Budget and National Planning. Right now, we've also developed the indicators in collaboration with the Bureau of Statistics to know where we're going. Once we have a basis for where we are starting, then we'll be able to benchmark progress as time goes on between now and 2030.
Well, I think moving on, we'll go to His Excellency in Kaduna, being a stakeholder, since we're coming down home to see how we fared in this. We know that Kaduna State is doing a whole lot in that direction, looking at how far you've been able to domesticate the sustainable development goals. Would you want to enlighten us along that line what Kaduna is doing, possibly that other states ought to key into? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me say hello to Edward. Happy to see you after our meeting at the UN. And going back to the question, well, we talked about national commitment to the implementation of the SDGs. But for us in Kaduna State, under the leadership of His Excellency Malam Nasir El-Rufai, while keying into the national aspirations, we believe that the states are the subnational governments, are the real link between, in our effort to link up with the communities, where indeed the need to achieve these SDGs reside. For us in Kaduna State, right from 2015, when the SDGs were launched, we were already there at the UN to illustrate our commitment to implementing the SDGs. We did that because we were coming from an experience of having a community in Kaduna State that had successfully implemented the MDGs. Under the guidance of the Millennium Promise, an international organization driven by the Earth Institute in Columbia University under the renowned Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and driven by the UN agencies. The experiences we got from that community, which was titled A Millennium Village, was that the MDGs ought to be approached from a multi-sectoral level, as well as ensure that the community take partnership, drive the process to ensure sustainability. We have taken this as a lesson. We also came from a background realizing that in other areas of the state, and probably in other areas of Nigeria, the MDGs couldn't have been successful because for 10 years into the program, there was lack of data to show where the states or the nation was at the level of attaining the MDGs. So we went to the UN then to show we are committed, we are ready to hit the ground running using these experiences from the MDGs. But first of all, for us, we have not drawn a line between the MDGs and the SDGs. Right now, as I speak, Kaduna State, under the Ministry of Rural and Community Development, led by a very experienced lady who worked with the special advisor to the president on the conditional grant scheme and so on, is driving the mainstreaming of that particular program in that community across the state. And we believe that in doing this, goals 1 to about 6 of the SDGs, which is largely a component of the MDGs, will be successfully implemented. But what we have done also differently is that coming from the issue of data, we have the Bureau of Statistics under the Ministry of Budget and Planning, led by a very, very hardworking and very visionary young commissioner who had worked with the Secretary General of the United Nations at one time, Mohammed Sani. Data is being generated in Kaduna State. We've already generated about 30% of the data required to tell us exactly where we are on the issues, on the SDGs, on the goals themselves. This is what we have done, preparatory to take off. Secondly, our state development plan has already also carefully encapsulated the SDGs, and the various sector implementation plans under the various ministries target the implementation of the SDGs, bearing in mind the data that is now available to them, and we have a roadmap for each ministry with timelines to ensure that the relevant aspects of the SDGs assigned to each of the ministries is implemented. So what we did when we went to the UN this year was to tell the story, our story of implementation so far in the last 2 years. And we went in there and made a presentation of our report. The report, the Kaduna State Sustainable Development Goals report, which, like Edward will admit, we were told at the UN that this was indeed the only subnational report on the implementation and successes already recorded by any subnational government. Kaduna State was the only state that was already there. And the report, of course, contains vital information that will provide the ministries the necessary data to drive the implementation of the SDGs. But even equally important is that because we are talking about global partnership, this we believe is what our global partners, our international development partners, the civil society organizations, and even our local development partners in Nigeria require to be able to come in and support our effort as a state. So,
all right, Your Excellency, thank you very much for that elaborate insight into what the state government is doing. But again, today is the 72nd UN Day here in Nigeria, and the theme is concrete action for the SDGs. That's what I'm going to ask you again with regards to improvement in the living condition of your people, with regards to having access to life-saving facilities like health, education, and of course other facilities in your state. What concrete actions so far have you been able to take? For instance, investment in social safety programs and other social issues.
Well, thank you very much. Take, for example, in education. Let me start with education. Indeed, when we came into government, we realized that we were inheriting a broken system, totally broken system in education. We had At the primary school level, we had children, about 70% of them seated on the floor. We did a teacher census, and we also examined the quality of teaching, and we found that everything was far below what is required. And since then, we have swung into action, first by putting the school environment in order through reconstruction and refurbishing of the dilapidated schools that littered the state landscape. And recently, again, of course, we have taken a hard look at the teachers themselves. And probably, as you may know, what we also discovered was appalling. We had a situation where we ran tests for teachers teaching in primary school, and we gave set examination for primary 4, and a lot of them couldn't make it. We have to let them go. We try to get something for them to do, and we intend to recruit new teachers to replace those who don't have the capacity to ensure the future of our children. We cannot destroy the future of our children, leave it in the hands of those that don't have the capacity to ensure a good future for these kids. In the governor's opinion, we must make Kaduna State public primary schools of such standard that for those that still have young children of primary school age in government, all of us must send them to public schools. We are doing that concerning the primary schools. In fact, recently we have gotten the World Bank's report in this direction to ensure that the schools are in order. We in the area of health, of course, the primary schools we have made compulsory for the first 9 years. Primary and junior secondary school we've made compulsory and free and compulsory, that every child must not be left out of school because of the conditions of his parents. We are now exploring the possibility of including the secondary schools. If we cannot do all that in the first stage, we can at least start with the girls' schools, so as to ensure that girls can at least attain the ages of between 16 and 18 before they get out of school.
Okay, special thanks to the Deputy Governor, Kaduna State. We'll come back to you. You've touched on very critical areas, and we need to come back to Professor Isaac Obasi. Professor Isaac Obasi, you followed the development goals from the Millennium Development Goals to the SDGs now. Looking at the poverty indicators, looking at inequality issues bordering on inequality, water and sanitation. What is your picture of the Sustainable Development Goals as we move on?
Well, the picture has been painted both globally, nationally, and subnationally.
From the academic perspective.
Okay.
What has the research shown, looking at the data, the numbers?
Well, the only thing I can say is that a good foundation has been started in setting what we call base indicators. If you don't have the base indicators, we run into problem we did in MDGs. So kudos to the office that developed in collaboration with UNDP, MBS, of the OSAP, developed a comprehensive Nigeria SDG baseline indicators. That is where to start first, to know a comparator, so that when you say what have we achieved, you can say this is where we were. So that's the lesson first we learned from MDG. Some areas we didn't have anything to compare with, and we didn't know where we are going. So right now I can say, for me, it's a tangible foundation setting activity that has been done. I don't know what concrete actions that have been done so far that you can say I talk on in terms of what progress we have made. You know, before you talk about progress, there must be M&E. You have to monitor what is on the ground. Ask yourself a simple question: what percentage of what was budgeted in 2016 was implemented either in the area of education, health, poverty alleviation, and etc. So that's to show you that unless we have tangible things on the ground, and then you do M1E, you bring a report that will now show us what difference has been made, either improvement, marginal, or significant.
Okay, Prof. Let's take it this way.
Yeah.
Against the provisions of the country transition strategy framework,
yes,
which was done after the MDGs were analyzed, and of course lessons learned,
yes,
and there was a framework, a strategy framework that was brought out,
yes,
and that framework outlined steps that can be taken to address in the implementation process of the SDGs. Participation is key. Of course, a policy and legal framework. There's also the communications and financial framework. Let's look at participation from your experience. I mean, this is we're almost getting towards the end of the second year of domestication of this instrument here in our country. With regards to participation, both at the subnational level, precisely, what are you reading?
Well, the question should have gone to OSAP SDGs.
Yes, from your perspective.
Since you are giving it to me, I will say that we are yet to really gain traction in those areas. If, for instance, you are speaking against the background of MDG, it took time for MDG to gain traction. The SDG, we didn't hit the ground running. That is true. It took time for OSAP NDG senior special assistant to be appointed and the rest of them. So, but as we have been told now, what for me they have done is to lay the preparatory stage that is necessary for concrete actions to be taking place. I have observed, and that is true, that MOUs have been signed with stakeholders, relevant stakeholders, and I think too that is important, but it's also preparatory. So I admit that is necessary to be done. I also see that the OSAP SDG has been collaborating with states, but it has not reached that stage where you now see many actions taking place, because the way MDG was implemented is slightly different from SDGs. The senior special assistant here being represented told us that indeed what they have done is to make sure they are mainstreaming. That mainstreaming is very important. Although I feel a little bit surprised that they are still mainstreaming SDG into ERG, Economic and Growth Plan. I thought that had already been mainstreamed. But it has to be so. Because if you mainstream that, you'll be able to talk about no poverty, go 1. Talk about zero hunger, go 2. Talk about good health. Talk about quality education, that's go 4. Talk about clean water and sanitation. Then you take it over to affordable and clean energy, go 5, and you keep on going. So if you get all of them mainstreamed in the budget, definitely, and budget is well funded and implemented, traction will take place. It cannot happen when these things have not been properly done.
Okay, Prof.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we need to come to SAS, the representative of Senior Special Assistant to the President on MDGs. You've talked about SDGs, sorry, because we evolved from MDGs, so MDGs will always come in there. So to what extent do you think we've made progress, apart from, because if we keep talking, we are in the second year now, and the year could run out with Nigeria still mainstreaming. Looking at the numbers, what really are we taking away? What are the things you look at and you say, well, I think we're on course?
Thank you very much for that question. I really think we are on course, because in any development pathway, you have to have a very good foundation when you're starting. Once the foundation is not right, then you may probably be wasting your time. In setting all these foundations that earlier speakers have talked about, this issue of, coming back to this issue of mainstreaming, if you do not mainstream the SDGs into the development paradigm of the federal and the states and the local governments, then you are not starting. Because the first thing first is the budget. Once the SDGs is mainstreamed into the national, states, and local government budgets, and then you prioritize, you are beginning to implement when budgets come into play at those national and subnational levels. So this issue of mainstreaming at the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs is working closely with the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, and then we're also working with the states through the conditional grants scheme that was applauded worldwide to make sure that you've heard what the Deputy Governor of Kaduna said, that they are already working in those areas in their budgets to make sure that the SDGs are implemented at all tiers of government, the federal level, and at the state level, and at the local level.
As we continue to mainstream, when are we going to start taking action, looking at the key issues as it affects the populace? Because we had a transition period. Yes. Programs outlined, analysis done about the Millennium Development Goals, yes. And I believe the subnationals were carried along.
Yes.
We expected a huge transition into the maintain of implementing those programs. Having found or looked at our plus minus in terms of the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals as we move into the SDGs.
Precisely, Cliff. Just as he said, there was an endpoint report.
There was an endpoint report.
Which, of course, gave rise to the country transition strategy framework.
Back to the country transition strategies. And going forward, we have, as I said, we have done the baseline reports. We have also done issues relating to, we have recently, the Presidential Council on SDGs was also established. We have also done some MOUs with the development partners and the private sector advisory group, because the funding for SDGs is going to be different from that was when it was done for MDGs. During the MDGs, Nigeria was earning a lot of money, the revenue. But you can see now that there's an economic downturn. So all avenues for funding have to be explored. That's why we have brought together the private sector advisory group, which was recently launched by the Vice President at the Villa. And we have also done one with the development partners. We are working closely with the UN system to make sure all these things are all about partnerships with the private sector, with the academia, and the development, and the NGOs, which is going to be launched soon. So we are working with all partners now to make sure this time around we leave no one behind in implementation.
Okay, Julius, yes. Thank you. Let me just move to the UN representative, because we're looking at the SDG and the progress being made so far. You are in Nigeria as the UNDP representative, and you're observing what is happening in Nigeria. You're also following the trend of what is happening globally in different regions. Looking at the numbers in the area of poverty, in terms of inequality, water and sanitation. What would you want to talk about the SDG from this perspective?
I think it's nice to give a little bit of credit to what Nigeria has done so far, because there is an important element in development pathways, putting in place the institutional frameworks that are so critical to manage this process. What Nigeria has done is putting together the multi-layered and multi-clustered coordination mechanism to more or less work on policy coherence in translating plans and strategies into actual aspirations and of people right down at the bottom. They have also gone 1 mile trying to ensure that development aspirations are really adapting to the needs of the people and reflected in both national and subnational plans. The impact you're talking about today is something that comes gradually. But again, I would say we exercise a little bit of patience, because the basic benchmarks have been established to start monitoring. Where we have to start is how do we allocate resources at this national and subnational level and ensure that these resources are used efficiently to deliver the results we want. The impact on poverty reduction is ongoing, but it's very gradual. Very, very gradual, and the numbers and the changes are not that big for a start. But my hope is that the benchmark has been laid. We need to work and support the government in Nigeria to mobilize financial resources, local domestic resources, support them in nurturing North-North, South-South, and triangular cooperation for partnership, and at the same time also pursue international global partnership to help in this process. Nigeria is very important for the SDGs. I can tell you that if Nigeria succeeds in best practices, the sub-region succeeds and Africa at large succeeds. So that is how I see how important Nigeria is in leading the SDGs implementation. That is the hope. And besides that, Nigeria is a rich economy. It has opportunity. The Economic Recovery Growth Plan at least has started producing results. I mean, the country is now out of recession. The GDP growth rate is at 0.55. Last year, it dived to negative 1.56 before the end of 2016. So when you talk about economic recovery, some progress is happening. Some progress is happening.
Yes, Mr. Callan, we're glad that we're, you know, at least theoretically out of recession, because there's also the question of, you know, that reflecting, of course, in, you know, on the prices of food, you know, in the market, the quality of life that the people. But that's another topic for conversation, which of course we have dealt with. Let me get to Kaduna now, since we're looking at the financing framework now, and you know, state governments are expected to also source for their own financing mechanism. With the MDGs, it was quite different. You know, there was a financing system via the conditional grant scheme, where state governments or tiers of government are expected to also make their own counterpart funding. This was also now, you know, stepped down to the local government areas. So that provided finance for the instrument. With the SDGs, is different. How are you sourcing your finance, your funds for this framework?
Well, thank you very much. Before I answer the question, I still want to reinforce the earlier point that I made, which was raised as to how far the journey has been. For us in Kaduna State, like I said, first, we've generated, or we are in the process of, we've generated as much as 30% of the data required. We have looked at household surveys, we have looked at, we have data on household surveys, we have data on population dynamics, you know, and so on and so forth. We have also, of course, we don't have time to roll out, you know, facts and figures, what is already being achieved in education, in health, where we are, of course, are doing the primary health care centers in each ward and equipping them and have awarded the contracts and so on and so forth. We may not go into that. But I think one important take home, you know, in the discussion is how really prepared, what framework, what institutional framework is in place. I think that is where it is. Like I said earlier, each of the sector implementation plans driven by the various departments of government have a responsibility with the policy direction that government is taking in respect of each goal to create not only a work plan but with timelines as to how to achieve the particular goals related to their various ministries. I think I need to let you know that here, for example, the Ministry for Women Affairs and Social Development, who has a very strong mandate to deal with, say, Goal 5, has already developed a very comprehensive document on the ministry's action plan for vulnerable children, which is like a guide, you know, which is like a compass that will guide in the implementation and the attainment of the goals as relate to issues to do with for example, what the vulnerable children are going through in the society. So we are not only good to go, but we are already moving. I also want to recognize what the federal government has done by setting up a presidential committee led by the president himself, you know, which brings in the parliament, the governors, the civil society group, development partners, to look at how these subnational efforts can be coordinated at the national level to ensure that that the story at the subnational level brought together gives the correct picture of what is happening at the national level. Coming back to the question, of course, like I said earlier, our state development plans, from which we derive our budget, already has the key development goals, sustainable development goals embedded in it. And so when the SDGs were launched, we discovered that we only needed to, what we needed to do differently was to pull out each of the goals and be very specific as to how they are being achieved, and to be able to present to the global community our level of preparedness so that we get the support of our partners. So this year's budget, for example, which is drawn from our State Development Plan 2016 to 2020, necessarily derives from the elements of the development goals that are embedded within the State Development Plan. So we don't really have issues with that. And I also told you about how the unfinished business of the MDGs in the case of Kaduna State, we intend to conclude on it without prejudice to the attention required to the, in implementing the SDGs. Somebody is sitting on that because there were lots of lessons that were learned from the Millennium Village concept, which particularly, like I said earlier, has to do with community participation, multi-sectoral approach to some of these issues. So in Kaduna State, we have a multi-sectoral approach to the implementations of, particularly from 1 to 6 of the goals, where the commissioners charged with these ministries come together in a multi-sectoral fashion to ensure that that we have something we can measure. And then equally important is that we know that we are already in the open space, global space. We've been noticed. I believe Edward will confirm this, and I would like him to say something about that. That we've been noted, and therefore for anybody who is being looked at, we are conscious that for every year we need to do a report of where we are on the implementation of the SDGs. So short of now rolling out each of the things we are doing in the area of attracting foreign investors to come in and set up industries to provide huge jobs, like we recently did with the Olam, which Mr. President himself personally came and commissioned, which is the biggest poultry feed mill in Africa, providing thousands and thousands of jobs. Going also to what we are doing with Dangote in the area of processing of tomato, and the Vicam Pro, and so many projects that we are working assiduously to ensure that poverty which is one of the major goals, is eradicated. So we may not have enough time, but what I want to each of the listeners to take home is that the administrative structure is being put in place to ensure that we don't only implement the SDGs, but we can measure our progress annually and report. And starting with the first report that we presented in the last United Nations General Assembly.
Okay. Special thanks to the Deputy Governor, Kaduna State. Your Excellency, you've talked so much from different perspectives: education, poverty as it concerns women, hunger, and all that. These are well-taken points, and I believe that we'll continue to celebrate progress made in those areas. We'd like to, at this point, thank you very specially, because we understand we need to excuse you to meet other exigencies. Thank you so much. Your Excellency Barnabas Bala Banktex. We thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, back here in the studio, before we go to Professor Obasi, we shall take a break to be back in a moment.
I see patients who come to me suffering from infectious diseases caused by germs, from typhoid to diarrhea, flu, cough. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily when we use the toilet, from our door handles, from other surfaces, we transfer to others without realizing. That is why we recommend Dettol Antiseptic Liquid. Protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure.
Another edition of TV Guide magazine is out with revealing accounts of trending stories. With the dwindling oil revenue, he says there is no reason to worry.
We strongly believe that culture is Nigerians' new oil, and we're going to show that by creating wealth, our art and culture will be a statement for all of us.
Our cover story is on Otumba Olumsegun Munchewe, Director General, National Council for Arts and Culture. For upcoming TV presenters, Elegant Elizabeth Banu tells you what it takes. A peep into the activities of the Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative, a mandate being fulfilled. A trip to the Yankari Games Reserve and Safari in Bauchi State brings you closer to nature. And the Oshun Oshogo Festival, our culture, our pride. Professor Adiku, the Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, tells us what it means to manage a university, plus our regular features, star profile, media issues, relationships, young minds, entertainment, sports, and lots more. Pick your copy now at the vendors or at every NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, still your indispensable companion.
It's about that time. States across the country coming together for one purpose, one goal. They are young, they are solution providers. The NTA ETV Children's Expo 2017, holding at the NTA Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja, with the theme Renewable Energy, Industrialization, Arts and Agriculture as tools to bring Nigeria out of economic recession, with sub-themes post-harvest processing and preservation, and using arts and crafts to promote tourism. Date 22nd to 27th October 2017. This expo is open to ages 6 to 12 years for junior category and 13 to 18 years for the senior category. It's about the Art, Science and Technology Expo. For sponsorship consideration, please call the following numbers.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and today our topic is we're looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, of course, which has a time frame of 15 years. By 2030, we'll be looking at how far we have gone. So we are taking, of course, a progress report so far. Sometime, just last month, Nigeria, of course, presented a national voluntary report at the United Nations, indicating, of course, what we have done and where we are going. But let's take these tweets that have come in before we take our next set of questions to the guests here in the studio. I'll begin with Dele Jack Solomon, and he tweets, my moderators, Nigeria must take the leadership position on the SDGs within the continent and internationally. By this, policies and plans must begin in earnest. Despite the slow pace of progress, the country has reportedly registered some remarkable achievements in some sectors in Nigeria.
And of course, from Hassan Labran, it says, our leaders have a lot to do in terms of their contemporary development relative to what is obtainable in other countries.
And Victor Uhiasuma says the SDGs is a developmental strategy that is to consolidate on the MDGs. Government at all levels should ensure proper implementation.
And Law Alpha writes that the inability of the governments to ensure parity of development across the country has given rise to ethnic agitations and protests to be relevant.
And Sani Michael Umakoje tweets, MDGs, which gave birth to SDGs, has good institutional framework in place, but its impact is felt more on media than off media. We hope SDGs will operate differently, but that's not entirely correct, because the MDGs did make some we did make some very good progress, especially with regards to poverty and universal basic education, and also on the health sector.
Yes, of course, possibly the numbers were not really presented for people to really appreciate. Sometimes if you don't bring these figures up, people don't get to appreciate what is happening, but they look at it from their own perspective. And from Dele Jack Solomon, he says, it is too quick to judge what the nation has achieved in the SDGs plan. We have to first begin by creating awareness and put measures in place towards successful attainment.
Well said. I know Mr. Callan here will agree with you, and of course the Julius Harry. Now, Festus Akimboye tweets, government will fail to achieve SDGs in Nigeria if there are no strategic policies that can be used to address issues like poverty, health, education, and water.
And Omobola Babs says the SDG was a metamorphosis of the MDG, but sadly, not many of the states met the MDG's objectives. How then do you sustain what is not met?
And we need more contributions in the areas of good education and health as soon as possible. This is a tweet from Additional Adebi.
And Dele Jack Solomon once again writes that the federal government must ensure that it eradicate in all states of Nigeria all forms of poverty and moving on to all states sustainable development path desired.
Law Alpha C. Nigeria is known for sound policy presentations, but the implementation is tilted towards political mindset, which will hit the rocks.
And Sani Michael Omwakoji says in Nigeria, neither MDGs nor SDGs has accurate data of the poor Nigerians, and as such, I think it is very difficult to cater for the poor in some states. SDGs is just a channel of another corruption. That's their perspective.
That's their perspective, really.
Well, I think let's go to Professor Isaac Obasi. You've had the comments of Nigerians. Essentially, the last comment from Sani Michael Omwakeji. Do you see SDG as another channel of corruption?
You're asking a professor in the university, you should ask the OSAP SDG.
No, you are observers. You do critique, you look at developments. I remember in those days in the classroom, we do a critique of what is happening in the larger society.
Yes. I was joking. You know I was joking.
Yes.
Yeah, surely it's a pessimistic view. And you give people that right to take any view they want to do in terms of their thinking caps. So that is pessimistic. A positive view is better because this is a global program and countries have used it to put themselves on a good right trajectory of development. And as we heard that the Kaduna State is doing, there is some hope that I got from what was happening. He promised and said every year they'll give a report of what they are doing. Good. So it will be very important to know what the various states are doing because they have offices that are driving the SDGs in their states. So let us know what they are doing because it is at that stage, that particular level, subnational level, that you can see people can feel it directly. Truly, we have a national baseline indicators now. But do the states have their own baseline indicators against which they will measure in their own side what they are actually doing, and rather than take cover at the national level statistics? So it is important that all the states will follow, if they are not leading, will follow what Kaduna is doing to make sure that they set the parameters in place to enable the effective implementation. As for corruption, it's not in any SDG we talk about it. The corruption is in the air, and the government is fighting it. So we leave it. That's not the discussion. That's not the discussion today.
Precisely, the government is fighting it.
Yeah, that's not the discussion today.
It's a global thing anyway. Yeah. But Prof, let me remain with you and look at the implementation strategy with the SDGs. Now, policies are integrated with each of the goals. What do you say in this? How effective will this be?
Yeah, you know, along the line today, the issue was mentioned about the fact that the office of the vice president, we didn't hear it here, right? But the office of the vice president is taking a huge chunk of what the CGS was doing before. That is very important to note. Okay, if that is the case, and that is an essential part of SDGs. So when you talk of social investment program, it is domiciled in the office of the vice president, not in OSAP NDG. So when you are measuring what OSAP is doing, you must bring that aspect, because a huge chunk of budgetary allocation went into it.
Does it make for easy monitoring and evaluation?
It is for government to resolve, and that office must tell us how they are collaborating with OSAP NDG to enable effective monitoring. This is very important, and I think that's where we have some dissonance, in terms of how people see what is happening. So nobody attributes what is, for instance, the school feeding program. Nobody attributes progress you made there to, progress made in SDG. But they are all the same. So it's left for government to harmonize that implementation strategy, not for somebody outside.
Mr. Cannon, how do you see this with regards to monitoring and evaluation? For instance, Goal 1, which looks at poverty now, we have, of course, a policy, integrated with the ministry, that deals with policy poverty alleviation.
Yes, I think the other guest speakers here have really outlined two critical issues that you have to bear in mind when you look at measuring progress. That is the evidence base that is so critical, and that is the parameters to monitor on. So I strongly believe that the linkages with the SDGs are critical for some of these projects that are in place, so that we can have baseline data in place and then use those baseline data to interpret progress and impacts that these investments are having on people in the most remote parts of this country, because those social programs are targeting people at those remote areas. So I think the OSAP has a role to play there. With government configurations and arrangement, there are reasons behind the way they organize it. But again, the opportunity here is now they have an institutional framework, and they should make that institutional framework do the job that it's supposed to do, and then lessen the fragmentation and increase the focus. And as the professor said, this is all going to be measured at the state level. I fully agree. We just don't have to talk about SDGs just in passing in text. It is calling about strengthening institutional policies and policy integration. It is talking about adopting innovative measures to monitor and analyze data on what is being done, and also promoting and fostering stakeholder partnerships that will promote and support the development that is going forward. So to me, if the framework is in place, you have to make it function. Fragmenting the functions doesn't help. And in the interest of transparency and accountability, you have to hold certain institutions responsible, and they should be able to report the progress.
That's why I like to come back to Mr. Julius Harry. The CGS, Conditional Grant Scheme, was an effective instrument under the MDGs, as well as the Conditional Cash Transfer. And these are also frameworks that the country transition strategy recommended. We haven't heard anything about the CGS. Are we still with it? Are we still running with it?
Thank you very much. The CGS is still very much in place. It is still very much in place. We are working with the states. You can hear what the Kaduna State has said. But we are working with the states. It's still a 50% budgetary from the federal government, 30% for the states, and 20% for the local governments. But because of the recent downturn of the economy, the way you used to hear of the CGS prior to 2015, before the SDGs were launched, is not the funding for the program.
Are they coming up with a counterpart funding? Has it been, as regular?
It's for the states. From what you have heard and seen and experienced in the states recently, you find that some states are even struggling to pay the salaries.
So do you have more states or less states now, keying in?
You have less states now keying in. It's not as much as the states, having 36 states, keying in, plus Abuja FCT in recent times before 2015. Now you have fewer states. It's not as it was prior to 2015 because of the economic downturn, as I said. But the CGS is very much in place. We are hoping as funds improve in the future, all the states and FCT will key in as it used to be.
Okay. Julius Harry, we thank you. Let's go back to Professor Isaac Obasi. You follow trend, you've been a public commentator, you've analyzed and researched on issues of development. And we're looking at the place of peer review mechanism. The idea of coming together to compare notes between the national and subnational bodies. What would be your take in that direction towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, I will give it 100% support, because you know that prior to the coming of this government, the peer review mechanism was really working. Of course, few states, you know, voluntarily requested to be peer reviewed. Ekiti was one of them, Anambra was one of them, and many others keyed into it and reached certain stages. Niger State here got to a higher level in terms of peer review. So that mechanism is still there. But when we had the factionalization of the Nigeria Governors Forum, you know, the problem started manifesting. Currently now, there is still unity among them. And I think that peer review should continue. And it was heavily funded or supported by partners, development partners. And lessons were learned from those peer-reviewed states. And I know many states are interested in it. So I encourage that you should be effectively utilized in knowing how far states are really implementing their various developmental programs.
Okay. Okay, Prof. let me take on the UN representative, because I know you're comparing us as we're making progress in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. And just like countries' challenges differ, so are their strengths. Are there things happening in other climes, in other regions, you feel Nigeria could borrow from, looking at how well they've implemented or tried to carry out the program of Sustainable Development Goals?
Yes, I mean, what are the goals as I described them earlier to you? They are development aspirations. Each and every governments around the world are at different stages of development. So you have to prioritize, as my colleague from OSAP said, and that is what Nigeria has done. You have done the assessment, and you have prioritized the areas that you need to focus on in order to actually give the spin that is required in your development aspirations. But there is a lot to learn. I was in one of the discussions where the Netherlands was giving an overview of what they were doing on SDGs. I mean, they are talking about upstream development at the very highest level, which is not really the priority of some other countries at this point in time. But these are lessons we can draw based on progress in development moving forward. And that is the beauty of the SDGs. It is universal. It also gives us that comparative opportunities to look at what is happening in other countries, learn those lessons, and bring those lessons here to cross-fertilize developments in Nigeria. And that is the job we are doing. How can we bring these global best practices to inform the development work of the government of Nigeria? And we'll continue working on this. I also want to leave a little bit of hope here, a seed of hope, that the states are all gravitating towards the SDGs. We have got numerous requests now from states to work with them, help them develop national plans to mainstream the SDGs, work on issues of data, and also putting in place a transparent, accountable mechanisms moving forward. There's light at the end of the tunnel, looking at it from that perspective. So I want to end by always reassuring you Nigerians. It's not only for you Nigerians. Nigeria is for the whole sub-region and Africa at large. So whatever progress you make here, the sub-region and Africa at large is eager to replicate the positive one, not the bad ones.
What are the challenges you've seen so far, and how do we address such challenges?
Yeah, the challenges, one is mobilizing the required financial resources to support implementation of the SDG, especially local resource mobilization, which is very critical. To that end, there's some hope at the end of the tunnel again. The country is gradually getting out of recession. Macroeconomic stabilization we put in place, but we have to see how Nigeria's economy becomes competitive and how Nigeria's economy starts investing in its people, yeah, so that they can grow together in a positive trajectory of contributing to national development. That is a link. The second one I want to add my voice on is to combat illegal financial flows. Okay. They are very critical. And we also have, the government has to work on mechanism to retrieve assets that have been taken out of this country. And last but not the least, promote the whistleblower policies so that those local resources can be used for investment in the country. I heard the statistics from one of the ministers who said that if the $6 billion that have been taken out of Nigeria can really come back to Nigeria, it can build X kilometers of road, X numbers of schools, X numbers of waterways, etc. You name it. So to me, those are the challenges the country is facing. And the last one, and I will leave, and I will stop here, is that the high dependency on oil over the years, has not created the opportunity to diversify this economy. But now there's some hope at the end of the tunnel, wherein people are not saying, hey, this oil is not going to be here forever. Let's talk about diversification of agriculture. Let's invest in value addition. Let's look at the manufacturing sector, and let's look at solid minerals, how these other components can contribute to this economy.
Okay, Mr. Callum, you've really, taken, I wanted to ask you another question, but just be brief about that. Would you also route for a one-loop legislation? Because in the past, there wasn't a legislation committing stakeholders, to their responsibilities, although we might have some form of legal framework, detailing agencies, of course, to provide some form of services with regards to health and education. But would you route for one loop legislation?
It is part of good governance, and that is institutions has to be held accountable, and legislation and policies have to be appropriate to ensure that institutions deliver on the responsibilities they have been given. It's just part of good governance.
Okay, I think we're home drive now. Let's have your last word on the way forward towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you very much for that. First of all, we have to, all these institutions that are implementing the SDGs, there has to be synergy. Like you said earlier on the social investment program, for instance, that is investing in the issue of poverty, the school feeding program, and all these programs that are scattered in all different institutions around the country at the 3 tiers, the federal, the state, and the local government. There has to be synergy in the way we implement the SDGs. And then secondly, this issue of monitoring and evaluation is very key, and report rendering, if it's going to be on a yearly basis or twice a year or on a 2-year basis, to show where we are as we go forward between now and 2030. That is very key. The issue of monitoring and evaluation using the baseline indicators has already been developed right now, and then using evidence-based planning to be able to focus on those areas where we need to have interventions in. So these are areas where we think we can do better in as we move forward in the implementation of the SDGs.
I know we would like to get your last word, the way forward.
Okay, the point Harris made is very important. I'm worried about factionalization, and I think the UNDP resident coordinator mentioned that point. It's important we harmonize. That is the only way we can, a monitor and evaluation can get real good data to compare. But if things are done separately and there is, this empire protection and rest of them, I don't see that helping us up in DGs.
All right, Professor Isaac Obasi, thank you. And let's quickly take the tweets that have come in. Godfrey Isobano tweets, SDGs is more of a venture project. The honesty and sincerity of partners is fundamental.
And Omobola Babs also writes that government across board must put machineries in place to ensure monies are not diverted. We all witness what happened in IDPs by handlers. Attaining SDG goals requires transparency and accountability. Whatever fund or finances channeled must ensure efficiency and effectiveness. And
Mogbola Babs tweets, 2 years into, if 2 years into the SDGs we are still talking about mainstreaming, suffices to say attaining the objective of SDG maybe older. And those are the tweets that we've come in. We'd like to appreciate our guests that are here. They've come to speak with us. Let me start with Mr. Edward Callan, who is the UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative in Nigeria. Thank you very much for your time. And Professor Isaac Obasi, Department of Public Administration and also a public analyst, University of Abuja. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us.
Thank you, Claire.
Mr. Jennifer Jelis Harry, who is head of sectors, the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President and SDGs, but who is here representing the Senior Special Assistant to the President and SDGs herself. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, we'll quickly move on to sports now. And
of course, we're talking about a whole lot. Gentlemen, we thank you so much for the perspective you gave to this conversation. As we move on to sports, Real Madrid's forward Cristiano Ronaldo returns Best Footballer Award to equal Lionel Messi's record. And in tennis, Simona Halep and Caroline Wozniacki win on day 2 of the WTA finals. Let's join our sports desk for details of these and more.
And the winner is Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo was named